Okay, welcome to the video for the final part of Flora's Fauna, which is going to be our nice simple envelope border, which is going to cover up all these ends. Now what we do need to do, some people do prefer to tidy up the ends after they've made the border, but I actually prefer to do it beforehand because I find these just get in the way and get tangled up if I don't. So I'm just going to show you just simple what to do. I mean, when you're dealing with acrylic yarn that's got a nice sort of secure sort of knot at each end, you probably don't need to worry too much about making them extra secure, but I'm a great believer in better safe than sorry. So what I usually tend to do is just make completely certain that there's no chance of these coming undone before, and just go around tying them together in pairs. Right, so and then just sort of pull it tight there. So sort of go around like so, tying them together. And then once you've done that, just need to make them a bit shorter. So don't cut them too short, because if you cut them way too close to that knot, then there is a chance it'll come undone. So I usually leave them roughly sort of 2 centimeters, just under an inch, something like that. Okay, so just go, if you haven't done it before, done it already, just go around the edge of your blanket like so, making sure all your ends are nice and tidy and secure, and then we will start on making the actual border. Okay, so I'm now ready to get started on the border. So first thing to mention is the hook. Now, although my pattern is written for 4mm hook, that is the kind of average size hook that you would need to use to get to the tension or the gauge that I suggested, you may have noticed though through the other videos that I've actually been using a 3.75mm. Because I've noticed recently, I think as the more and more mosaic crochet I do, my stitches got a teensy bit looser, probably because I'm a little bit more relaxed doing it now. So so what I've now done is I've now dropped down half a hook size, so from 3.75, that's taken me down to 3.25mm. It's going to be personal taste for you really which size you use. Most people will need to use a smaller hook to keep the border nice and flat, and avoid little sort of bumps in it. And usually sort of half a hook size is about right, but yeah, I'll leave you to judge that. So I've got my smaller hook. I've also got, if you notice, a little pile of markers here, because we're going to be, just to help us make, I mean, it's a lovely easy border, but it's made extra easy by marking key stitches, so we don't have to start sort of rooting around trying to work out where we are. So I've got a marker for each corner, and then I've got one which we're going to be marking the slip stitch at the end of each round, because we're going to be working into that. So we've got one for that, and then there's another one when we come to do the pattern, just so we can again find it easier to see where to put that. But I'll explain all of those as we go around. So you're going to need some markers and a smaller hook than you had for the body of your blanket. Okay, so there's actually two options for the border here, depending on whether you want it to sort of match up with the spacer panels that I recommended for the small blanket or for the large blanket. They're both interchangeable, just like the spacer panels. Both patterns are totally interchangeable and will work equally well around whatever size project you're doing. But to keep things sort of more easy to follow in the pattern, I've sort of specified whether it's for the small blanket or the large blanket. Okay, and if you haven't done an envelope border before, you may not know, but basically it's two borders. I'm going to be working two borders around, which does seem a little bit labour intensive, I know, but that will just enable us to then hide all these little ends between the two borders. And when you join the two borders together, you get this amazing thing happen where you don't get any little curls. You know, sometimes if you're doing a single border, the corners will just curl up. Well, that just won't happen with your envelope border. It'll be lovely and flat. Right, so I've got my little pile of markers that will help us with the border, and I say just show you, I'm now at the top edge of my blanket. So this is the very last row that I worked on the main body of my blanket. So we're going to be starting, if you can see there, in this chain, the last chain on that last row. So we're not going to be working into the chain space. You could, if you wanted to, work around those chains like so, to make it like a front post stitch. But if you do that, just be aware that when you do the border on the other side, you will then see little dotted lines, or like a line down the edge there, where if you look when you do that, so you'll have the yarn from the other border on there. And also, and if you do that, you'll then probably want to do post stitches around there. I don't do that to keep it lighter, because I've got another method, as you may be aware, where I did do front post stitches, but that does make it a little bit more bulky. So by working into the chains, so at the top we're gonna work our first stitch like that, but all the way along the edge we are going to basically be working a double crochet into that chain there, like so. Okay, so that's all we're going to do all the way out. It's really quick and easy to get started there. Okay, so we'll get started with a standing double crochet into, as I said, this last, just that front loop of this last chain on the final row of our blanket. Okay, if you notice, I didn't actually put, and I'll start again, didn't actually put a knot in the end of that first, like normally with a standing double crochet when we've been doing the blanket, I've started with a slip knot on the end, but this I've just basically, if you see, just twisted the yarn around. That will just mean that you don't then end up with a bulky knot in your border. If you prefer to start with a slip knot, that's fine. Anyway, it's going to start, like I said, just in that front loop of that very last chain on the last row of our blanket, and we're going to pop a double crochet in there. Okay, so now we've got one chain, just one, and then another double crochet in that same stitch. Don't worry about it all sort of pulling up there, that'll all get sorted out at the end. Okay, so now what we need to do, this is where the markers come in. So we've got double crochet, chain, double crochet, but you can see it's very difficult to sort of spot which is the chain. So to help us with that, I'm going to do this on every corner. We are going to pop a marker just in that last chain. Okay, so whether you put it in the front loop or the back loop doesn't really matter there. I'm just going to pop it into that front loop of that chain. Okay, so we now know where our corner is going to be, because we're going to be working into that chain. We don't work into chain space, we're going to be working into this actual chain when we do the corner on the next round, and that will, you won't really notice, there won't be any kind of hole there. Like, you know, normally on the corners when you work into chain spaces you get a little hole, but you won't there, that'll fill that in. Okay, so that is now our first corner done. So now all we're going to do, as I said, I've just turned that around, we are now going to be working, so insert your hook like so into this front loop of that chain and work your double crochet there. Oh, hold on, didn't quite get all of the, that's no good, is it, on that stitch? That's split a bit. Right, there we go. So I'm going to work into that front loop there, double crochet. So that's all we're going to do. Work down the edge like so, just picking up that front loop of those chains. Okay, and that is how easy it is to get started on your envelope border, if you remember to have that little chain space at each end. Okay, so carry on like so until you get down to the end of this side, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so I've now just got a couple more stitches to pick up down this edge, and then I'll get to that sort of second corner. We started this row, this edge with a corner, right? So we'll just do the last couple in there. So as I've been doing all along, carry on like so, just in that front loop, right down to the very, so this is now actually, because I started at the top of my blanket, this is now that foundation chain here. Okay, so just carry on, and this time we're going to be working just front loop double crochets just into these stitches here. So we're going to start with our corner in this first chain here. Okay, so 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet, all into there, and then remember we're going to just pop our marker into that chain. Oh, get in, there we go. So we now know where our corner is, and as I said, we're just now going to simply insert our hook into that front loop of every chain along the bottom there. Okay, so it's important to just do the front loop, because when we come to do that back border, we're going to be using the other loop for that. Okay, so just carry on like so, and I will see you again at the next corner. Okay, so I've now just got to the next chain there at the bottom edge of the blanket. So here we can do this corner exactly the same way as we've done the last two. So it's just a case of working into the front loop of this chain. We're going to do 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet. Okay, and then we're going to pop our marker into that chain. Brilliant. And then it's a case of turning around, and we're going to go back up this edge. So again, it's just a case picking up, maybe if you can see, this front loop of the chain. They look a little bit different at this end, but it is still, if you're worried about where to start, just pull it out so you can see the actual spaces, and then just get this front loop there. Okay, and we're going to work as before into there. You can always tuck your finger there to just put them out of the way if you want. Okay, put that marker out of the way. So it's just double crochet into the front loop of all of those chains up this edge. Okay, so carry on like so, and I will see you when you get to the next corner. Right, on the home straight for this first round of the front border here. So I've just now got up to the last corner we're going to need to work here. So again, it's just make sure, difficult to show you, but there's definitely the chain space there. So we're now going to be working, our corner will be 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet into the front loop of that last chain, or the first chain on the top edge. And as we've been doing all along, we're going to pop that marker into that chain. And now, just as we did at along the bottom edge of the blanket along the top, we're going to just now work a whole row of double crochets just into that front loop, right along the bottom edge. Okay, let's carry on and do that. And I will see you when you get to the end of this row, which is also right where you started this round. Right, so I've now just done that last stitch along that top edge of my blanket for the border there now. So now we just need to join it up to where we started. So it's going to be a nice simple, just a slip stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into that first standing double crochet we did there, pull through. Now make sure you don't pull this loop too tight, because we're actually going to be working the last stitch of round 2 into that slip stitch, so we don't forget where that is, so we don't lose that slip stitch. Just going to pop another marker in there. Okay, we only get quite a few markers in the corners, but don't worry. Okay, and now to start the next round, this is where it's handy that we've marked this corner chain, because we're going to do one chain. This chain doesn't count as a stitch, it's just basically a turning chain to get us up to the right level. And then what we're going to do in this mark stitch, just into that back loop of it, so I've actually put my marker into the front loop, and that means that I can get hold of that back loop, and we're going to do our corner into there. So that'll be 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet. So just like we were doing on the other corners. Now what I'm going to do, take this marker out of here, I'm just going to pop that into that chain again. So it's a case of always making sure you stick a marker in that corner chain so it's easy to find again. Okay, so we've got a different coloured marker here which marks where the last stitch of the next round, well, this round I've now started on, is going to go, and then this one is for the corner chain. So we're going to do that, every corner will be done the same. Okay, so now all you're going to do along the edges is work back loop double crochets. Okay, so into that back loop, nice and easy, just going to do, there we go, like so. So you may notice that I haven't actually mentioned stitch counts at all on here, and that's because for this border, that when we get to the little pattern bit, it's only a 2 stitch repeat. So ideally you will have an odd number of stitches along each edge of your blanket. Now for Flora's Fauna, you'll probably find that on the top and bottom edges you have got an odd number, but when you're doing the left and right edges, you'll probably have an even number of stitches. But don't worry about that, we don't need to adjust it here, we can easily adjust it when we actually come to row, I think 6 off the top of my head, but when we get to that first row where we do our front loop trebles, we can adjust it there. So don't worry about that, it's just a case of working around back loop double crochets, and when you get to those marked corner stitches, just do into the back loop of that again, just do 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet, and remember to move your marker up. Right, I've now just got to the end of round 2 of the border, so you can see I've now just got up to that marked stitch, so that's where I marked the slip stitch at the end of the previous round. So we've got to make sure we just work another back loop double crochet into that marked stitch. Whoops, I pick it up like so. I'm going to take that out, and then we've just got on now, so that was the marked stitch, this is that chain that we did, that sort of turning chain, so we ignore that and we're going to slip stitch into that next one, so that's right next to our marked corner chain. So we slip stitch into there like so, and again pop that marker in there so we know that that's where we're gonna, oh, if I can do it up, work our last stitch on this next round. So to start the next round, we've got our turning chain again, and then remember we've now got our marked corner stitch, so we start there into that back loop of that. I can get my hook in. Can't crochet at the moment. There we go. So we've got 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet. I'm going to take that marker out and move it up there. Okay, so then it's just a case of basically repeating, well, that's the start of exactly what we did there on round 2. Just repeat that all the way around again. So that's back loop double crochets all the way around, apart from in the corner where we're going to be working 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet into that back loop of that corner chain. So I'm now going to do 2 more rounds, so I will have 4 in total, and then I'll come back and we'll be bringing in another colour. This is obviously if you want a wider border, you can now add some extra rounds. If you want a narrower border, you might actually want to leave it where you are here. Entirely up to you, but when you're ready to do the next bit of the pattern, come back to me and we'll take it from there. Right, so I've now got to the end of round 4, and you'll probably notice I've now got some extra markers here because we're going to be marking we're going to be marking twice in each corner. I'll explain what I mean in a second. Right, so to finish off round 4, we've got the marker there that I put in that slip stitch at the end of round 3. So I'm just going to make my last back loop double crochet in there, and then as always, just as normal, slip stitch in there. And now I'm going to mark this again. It is going to get nice, rather crowded with markers in the corner, so it's quite useful actually if they are all different colours. Okay, so that's that done. So now what we need to do, we need to pick up our next colour, or CC3. And what we're going to do is just simply pull that loop through there, pull that down. Okay, so I'm now going to do, and I just make the stitches in the corner, is just work over this end just to hold it in place, but we will still need to weave it in at the end. So we're now starting again as we always do at the start of our new round with the turning chain. Now if you have been marking your corner chains just into that front loop like I have, you can leave that marker where it is. If you've been putting your marker under both loops or into the back one, just take it out now and move it forward to that front loop. Okay, because then what we're going to be doing is working into that loop, so that's exactly the same as we have been there. So pick up that back loop, just going to, like I said, just working over that tail just to hold it in position. So we've got 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet, but we're leaving that marker there. I'm just going to pull that down there so it's all nice and neat. So I'm now going to pick up my new marker and pop that into that front loop of that corner chain. Okay, and then we're just going to carry on exactly as we have been for the last couple of rounds. So it's all back loop double crochets, but in the corner we're doing 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet, but just remember to leave a marker in that front loop of your round 4 chain as well as the new one in your round 5 chain. Okay. Oh, pick up the right yarn. Okay, just work over that once more, so that's nice and secure. We'll weave it in later. So there we go, just back loop double crochet all the way round, and I'll see you when you get to the end again. Right, so I'm now almost to the end of round 5. Just got the last couple of stitches to do. So there we go. Here is our marked slip stitch at the end, so we know we've got to work our final back loop double crochet over the round into there. Okay, like so. And then as usual, we're still going to be working, we're just joining up to that first double crochet there with a slip stitch, and then pop that back into there again. Right, so now we get to the next markers. So there is the marked round 4 corner chain, and this is the one we just did on round 5. So what we now need to do, if you are doing the small blanket version of the border, you can now cut your C3 colour. If you're doing the large blanket, just sort of leave it at the back ready, because we're going to need it again in a couple of rounds time. Okay, so we've now joined at the end of row 5, and to start round 5, to start round 6, we're going to do just what we did before. We're going to basically, like I said, either drop that and leave it at the back if you're going to be doing the larger border, or you can cut it off if you're doing the small border. Now, whichever one we're doing, we're going to need to pick up our C5 just by pulling that loop through there again, and you can pull that end down to close that up. Then we've got our turning chain, as we usually do. Okay, so now we've got, remember I actually marked my corner chains just in that front loop of the chain, so we can leave that there and now work into the back loop. If you've got your marker in a different loop, just make sure you've moved it through to the front one. We're going to now go to that back loop of that chain and work our corner as usual, which is 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet. Okay, so then we're going to pop our marker into there again. Okay, so we've marked that corner chain again. Right, now we've got quite a lot of markers in here. So if you are doing the small blanket, you won't now need to keep this chain marked. You can actually take that out of there, because this is now going to be the final round of our border. If you're doing the larger one, we are going to need to work into this chain again, so leave that marker there. Okay, so whichever you're doing, put that marker out to one side, or take it out if you don't need it because you're doing the small one. So now the next stitch we do, we're not going to carry straight on here. We're now going to be doing a pattern sort of similar to what we've done with our spacers, and we're going to start with a front loop treble in this marked stitch from round 4. Okay, so pop that in there. Bit tricky with the marker in. Okay, so we start that, and right when we get right to the end of the round, we're going to be working into that right at the end as well. I'll leave the marker there now because of that. So now all we're going to do all the way along this edge, so is make sure you start in the right place. Okay, so we've got, this is the stitch that we've just worked in front of. So now we're going to start with a back loop double crochet in there, and then it's just a case of alternating 1 front loop treble, 1 back loop double crochet. So that's what we're going to do all the way along. So actually I've got the little repeat being 1 back loop double crochet, 1 front loop treble. Okay, so keep repeating your back loop double crochet and then 1 front loop treble all the way along. Now, depending on the number of stitches you've got along each edge, your final front loop treble will either be into the marked round 4 corner chain at the other end of the row, or it'll fall just before that. So I'll meet you at the next corner. I'll explain what we do there. That's how we're going to adjust the stitch counts. So if it falls just before, we're going to just need to miss a stitch basically. So okay, so I've now got to the end of this first edge of round 6 here, and as you can see, my final front loop treble is actually going to fall just before that corner chain, because we had an even number of rows down this side of down the sides of the blanket. So I do expect when you're doing the border on the sides that you're going to end up like that. That's fine. All we now need to do now, if you're doing the small blanket, to be honest, you can probably just work your double crochet there, then do your corner as normal and have an extra stitch there. Not a problem. If you are doing the large blanket though, to make each of the corners look exactly the same, what we're going to need to do is miss this last stitch there, because we need to end the rows with a front loop treble and then work straight into that corner chain. So although I'm actually doing the small blanket here, I'm actually going to just show you how to do that anyway. So say I'm now, if your last treble had ended in there, then your next stitch to work would be the chain. So we're just going to continue as if that was the case. Okay, so again, into the back loop of this marked chain, I'm going to work 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet. So I've just skipped that stitch. So we'll mark our corner chain as we always do. And what we've got to remember as well, because we're now going to be doing, and shortly going to be doing the border on the wrong side of the blanket, and we want to make sure we end up with exactly the same number of stitches along each edge for both borders. So what we're going to do, because we've now missed a stitch there, take my hook out, good idea is to pick another marker. So you do need a good old collection of markers for this, and just mark down here. So if you can see, there we are, that was the chain where we worked all our stitches in the corner on that very first round. So I'm just going to stick a marker in there, and that will be a little reminder when we come to do the back border that we're going to have 1 stitch less in that corner. That will then make it right by the end. So for most of the blanket we'll actually have 1 stitch less, but that won't be a problem at all. That's just to remind us to do that. Okay, so now, and as I said, because I'm actually doing the small blanket, I'm actually going to remove this marker here now because I don't need it. If you're doing the large blanket border, leave this marker in here, marking that front loop of that corner chain from round 5, because you're going to be working your next round the corner in there in the corner. Okay, but I'm not, so I'm going to get that out of the way because there's enough markers in this corner. Right, so now what we do, we're going to be working into this marked stitch, into this marked corner chain next. And so if you had like I said, if you'd had an odd number of stitches down this side too, then both of these trebles, that one and the one we're now going to work here, would all both be worked into there, but we've just done it a stitch earlier. It really doesn't show in the end. Okay, so start that round on this side edge with the front loop treble in there, and then we can remove that because we've now done that corner. Okay, that gives us a little bit more space. Alright, so if you were doing the large blanket, you would have your marker still in that stitch. So now it's just carrying on as we did before. So you've got 1 back loop double crochet, 1 front loop treble until you get to the end. And what you should find when you're doing the top and bottom edges is that your last treble will actually fall into that marked corner chain, because we had an odd number of stitches at the top and bottom. Right, so I've just now got to the next corner, and as you can hopefully see, I'm about to do my final treble, and that, as I hoped and expected, is going to fall right into that marked chain there. So we end that there. So there's just no extra stitch to miss on that round, so we don't need to worry about marking the other side. We can just go straight away and work our corner into our marked round 5 chain there, 2, 3 stitches, so double crochet, chain, double crochet, and pop our marker into there. And as before, if you were doing the large blanket, leave this marker in, marking that front loop of that corner chain, but I'm doing a small one, so I don't need it. I'm going to take that out to get it out of the way. So now we go around the corner, we're going to work straight into this marked chain again, and now we can carry on along the edge like so. So what I'll do, I'll just take that marker out of there, and I can just show you the difference. So this is what your corners look like if you had an odd number of stitches along the edge of your blanket, where you will be working both of the trebles in the corners on each side into that corner chain. So that's like that. And if we go to the other end where we started this, because along this other edge we had an even number, you can see it's slightly different, but it's really difficult to really tell the difference because we just worked our last treble of this side into the loop before. But that is basically, you can see there, the corners. And once you now if you're doing the large blanket especially, once you've then worked your little sort of corner square, you really won't be able to tell the difference. You'll have to look very closely. Okay, so just carry on all the way around, completing round 6 of your blanket, and I will see you when we get back to the beginning again. Right, so I've now got to the end of round 6 with my little cluster of markers there. So if you remember, this dark blue marker marks the slip stitch at the end of the previous round each time, which is where the last stitch goes. Now for this, so I've now got to it, you can see I've just done my last back loop double crochet, and that comes to the stitch before that, which is brilliant because this is effectively, we won't actually be working into that slip stitch this time because remember we've got to finish our corner. So I'm going to take that out to get that one out of the way. Okay, so if you remember when we started this round, I said we were going to be ending up in that same corner chain that we started in. Yeah, so I left the marker in there so we can see that. So that's it. The final stitch is going to be in front of that, worked into that chain. Okay, like so. So for me, as I'm doing the small blanket border, that is it. That's now finished. I can just sort of fasten off. Before I do that, I'll just show you what you would do if you were doing the large blanket. So if you're doing the large blanket, what you would do is, as we've been on all the other rows, you would join with a slip stitch, mark that slip stitch, and then as we did before, you're going to pick up your other colour. So you'd leave your C3 colour, C3, C5 at the back, C5 at the back, and pick up your C3, pull that loop through, and then it would be a case of your turning chain, and then just like we did on the last one, you've got your, in this marked corner chain, it would be, I'm going to pull this out again, but I'm showing you how you'd get started there. Case of, you got it, 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet, and then you're going to work, I'm going to leave that marker in there because we'll need that for what we're doing on this. So, but what you would do with the large one, you'd actually take that marker out of there now. Would you? Yes, you would. And put it into your chain there. So you've got your corner as usual, and then it's a case of working, there we go, your treble in there. So if you can see, and then you're going all the way around, working a double crochet, which will be into the trebles, and then a front loop, treble, 2 rows down. So that, if you were doing the large size, this is how you'd now continue. Okay, so very similar to what we've done on row 6, but you're basically filling in the trebles like so. All right, so that is what you would be doing if you were doing a larger border. I'm not going to do that for my blanket, so I'm now just going to pull all this back that I've just done in C3. Oh, probably have to take that out. So I'm going to go back to where we were. Right, okay. So I'm now back at, I've just done, get here, I've just done that last treble there, so I'm going to remove this marker because it's in the way. So I've now just done that treble into the same corner chain where we did our first treble at the beginning of the round again. Get rid of that. Leave this marker in because we need to know where the corner chains are, so we can get the front border and the back border all lined up properly. So leave that one in, but now we're just going to do an invisible join. Okay, so it looks much neater and it's much easier to keep a track of your stitches. So to do an invisible join, if you're not aware how to do it, we're going to pull that up like, chop off, I don't know, about 15 leave about 15 centimeters, 6 inches, something like that. And then what we do, we don't pull, normally to fasten off you would pull that through, we don't do that. We're actually going to pull that like so. So we have got, if you can see, just the one strand of yarn now coming out of the middle of our final stitch. And then what we do, we thread that end onto a tapestry needle. And what we're going to do, we're actually now going to be replacing the top loops from our first double crochet there. So what you do, don't actually insert your hook into that stitch you started with. You go for the next one, which is actually our chain. So where we've got that marker, if you go in there, you see you'll create an extra stitch. If we go here like so, so underneath both of those loops, make sure you don't pull this too tight. Can you see what we're doing? We're now going to actually create an extra loop that looks just like all of the others. Okay, so don't pull it too tight. Now we're going to take the hook and insert that into the middle of there where our yarn came out of the stitch. And I always like to go just down through, so there's that extra little loop at the back there, just sort of extra security. Okay, so pull that down like so, and say just pull it tight enough so it looks exactly like all of the other stitches, and that is why it's an invisible join. Okay, and then all you need to do is to go onto the back. Again, make sure you don't pull it too tight because we need to leave that looking nice and neat and tidy. So we're just going to weave in these ends. Okay, so go along like so. I like to go around there like that. And then if we come back again the other way, we're nice and secure. Okay. That's not going to go anywhere. Again, don't pull it too tight. We don't want to ruche anything up. Okay, trim that off. That's all the actual, you don't have to be too neat with these ends because that's obviously all, don't need to be too neat with those. I hope you saw what I just did there and I didn't drift off the edge of the screen. So yeah, do the same with these ends as well. Weave them all in so they're nice and secure. And the one you started with. And then I'll be back in a moment to show you the border 2, which we're going to be working on the wrong side there. Okay. Okay, so I'm now ready to start border 2, and that is basically going to be much the same as border 1, apart from the fact we're not going to bother about our little pattern at the end. I'm just going to make it all plain rounds of back loop double crochets. So if you remember on the corners where we had to skip a stitch at the end before the corner just to make that little pattern right, I told you to put a marker in the other side. So for those corners, I'm going to start with one of those just to make it easy to sort of explain to you what we do with those corners, but you can start in any corner you wish, and that will be in that end chain that we've got on there. So I'm starting there. So we're going to need some more stitch markers to mark our, so I've got 4 yellow ones which are going to be marking, like we did on the front here, marking our corner chain. and I've got an extra one, it's that dark blue one again, which is going to mark the slip stitch at the end. So apart from that, it's exactly the same as before. So to get started, say I'm starting with one that I marked, so I know that I've got to skip one of the stitches in the corner, so we end up with the same number of stitches on both borders. So start again with the standing double crochet into that marked chain there. Okay, so that is my double crochet. I'm going to take that marker out because we don't need it anymore. That was just to tell us we're missing one of the stitches. So on a normal corner, if I hadn't marked it, what I would now do is one chain and then another double crochet into that same chain. But because I marked it, I'm just going to do the chain, and then we're going to start straight away working down the edge. So that chain is going to need to have, whoops, a little marker put. I'll do it in a minute when I've done the next stitch. It's going to need a marker put in it, so it can be slightly trickier. Some people find it a little harder to see the chains on the back because we've already got the stitches worked on the other side. But if you just, I don't know if you can see that, give it a little stretch, hopefully that just helps you see where the chain is. Okay, so it's just going to be a case of inserting our hook into that chain. There we go, and then it's exactly the same as we did on the other side. Just going to work our way right down, working into those chains right until we get to the next corner. If it's marked, we do like I did at the start here, so that will be one double crochet, one chain, and then turn and come down the other side. If it's not marked, make sure you just do one double crochet, one chain, one double crochet in every corner. But apart from that, as I said, it's exactly the same. Okay, so just carry on and do that. I will just see you when we get down to the next corner. Right, so I've now got down to the next corner, and as there's no marker in that, we know we can just do the corner as it's written in the pattern, sort of nice and balanced. So it's a case of now, so find this last chain. Okay, so you can see where we worked into the back there. Hopefully you can see where all the chains are on the other side. So we're just now gonna, you can actually pick up both of the front loops there if you want to finish that off. So it's going to be one double crochet, one chain, one double crochet, and remember to just pop that marker into that chain so we know how to find it next time. And then it's just a case of along this edge, we're just gonna, there's only the one loop left that we can work into, so it's just going to be a case of working double crochets into this. Oh, I picked up a little bit of the loop, hold on. So just working double crochets into, I keep picking up a little loose bit of yarn. Try again. So double crochet into each of those. Okay, along there. So you'll do the same when you get to the top edge of the blanket as well. Okay, so carry on like that all the way around, and as I said, if you come to a corner where you put a marker in it, remember you're just doing one double crochet, one chain into that corner, that marked corner chain. If there's no marker, then it's one double crochet, one chain, one double crochet. Alright, so carry on around, and I'll see you when we get to the end of the row, just so I can remind you what we do when we finish each round and start the next one. Okay, so I've now got to the final stitch of round 1 of border 2, so I'm just going to work that into that last front loop there, and then we're basically going to be doing just what we did on for the first few rounds of border 1. So at the end of the round, slip stitch into, in this case it's the standing double crochet, but it will be into that, well, the first double crochet that you do on the round. So slip stitch into there. Remember, don't pull that too tight. Stick a marker in that slip stitch you've just made, and then what you remember to do is when you get to the end of the row, the last stitch of the round will be worked into that marked stitch, so just the same as we did on border 1. So now to get started again with the next round, it's just a turning chain that doesn't count as a stitch, and then we've got our marked corner chain. So we're just going to work into the back of that actual chain. There you go, with 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet, and it doesn't matter what you did on border 1. Now we don't need to worry about doing anything different in any of the corners, because we've already adjusted that stitch in that first round. So it's just every corner will be like so. So just going to remove that marker from that round and move it up. So I mean, if you want, you can do exactly the same as we did on border 1 and do your little pattern as well, but I am just going to basically do 6 rounds of plain back loop double crochets, because we've got a total of 6 rounds there. So however many rounds that you did in total on border 1, you repeat on border 2, and the only thing you do at the end is, rather than joining with a slip stitch, we did an invisible join, didn't we? So you carry on round, do all of your however many rounds you need to, and when you get right to the end, the last couple of stitches of your final round of your border, if you're not quite sure how we finish it off, come back then. I'll just show you the invisible join again then. But in the meantime, it is just a case of back loop double crochet in every stitch, and in the corner chains, remembering to do 1 double crochet, 1 chain, 1 double crochet into the actual chain, not the chain space, and then mark that chain so we can find it again easily next time. And that is that. Right, so I've now got to the end of the final round of my border 2. So we've just got, as you can probably see there, now just got to do that last stitch into this marked slip stitch. So get rid of that. Don't need that one anymore, because we're not going to be worrying about any more slip stitches and working into them. So there's my last stitch into that one that was marked. Now on the previous rounds we've been working a slip stitch into there, haven't we, to join. But to make it nice and neat, as we did on border 1, what I'm going to do is an invisible join. Okay, so cut that off. So then we pull that out, so we've just got the 1 strand of yarn coming out of that last stitch. Thread that onto our tapestry needle, and as I said before, we don't work into this first stitch there where we would have slip stitched. We're going to be replacing this loop, so make sure you actually insert your needle there. Okay, if you do it into the previous stitch, you'll create an extra stitch for yourself. Okay, don't pull it too tight. Then we're going to insert that back into that loop it came out of, and I say also pick up that back one. There we go, and just pull it so it just looks like all of the other loops. There we go, and that's why it's an invisible join. So then, as before, and just weave that in on the back. Okay, back again this way, and to be completely certain, we'll go back again that way. Okay, chop that end off, and just got to remember to go back to this first one and weave that in too. Right, so now we've got our 2 borders, front one there and the plain on the back, and obviously we've got all our little ends loose in between, so we just now need to join the 2 together to hide those up. So you can start in any corner make sure you've got your right side, your border 1 facing you, and then we're just going to start at any of the marked corners. So we're going to have a standing double crochet to start, and because I'm going to go in the work in the round and join up at the end, I don't usually start with a slip knot on my hook, just a personal thing. So I'm just going to start like so by twisting that yarn around, and then we insert just into the back loops. So where you've got this marked corner chain for the front, I've just gone into that back loop there, and I'm going to go into, like, well, it would have been the back loop as you worked it there, so that's like the inner loops if you like. Okay, so if you can see there, the 2 marked corner stitches for the 2 borders. Just going to start with a double crochet, standing double crochet in there, and then as with all of the other corners, I'm just going to work another double crochet in the same place. So all of the corners are going to have 2 double crochets in them. Okay, so then we're just going to work, oh, get that out of there. We're just going to work around the blanket, just picking up the inner loops, so like the back loop as it would have been worked of each of these stitches. So I've got that one there, and I'm going to pick up, there we go, on the back, and work a double crochet through that. So that is how we are going to join our 2 borders together. So it's as simple as that. Just carry on around the border, joining the 2 together. There we go. Just picking up those sort of inner loops of each of the borders with a double crochet. Okay, and when you get to the corners, if you haven't missed any stitches down the sides, you should find that you get to your little marked corner chains at exactly the same time for each border, and just make sure when you get to those marked stitches you work 2 double crochets in there, not just 1, just to fill out the corners. Okay, you might even want to work 3 to make it a sort of much crisper corner, but I think 2 works okay personally, but it's all personal taste. Okay, right, so I've now got right the way around, joined the entire border up, and I've just now got to that last invisible join. So we'll just do that together. So again, it's ignore this first one with the standing double crochet, and just insert your needle under that next stitch. Don't pull it too tight, we can pull that one down out of the way because we're basically creating a new top loop for that. Then insert that back into there, and that back bit. Again, just pull it tight enough so it looks just like the other stitches, and then we've just got to weave in the back. Obviously this is now part we're going to see, so we need to be slightly more careful. So what I tend to do, I'm now going to, in there, just wriggle my hook down, needle down there again. Make sure you don't pull that too tight because we don't want to bunch anything up. Okay, and then what I'll tend to do is just wrap it around the 1 stitch there, go like between for a few more stitches. So make sure you don't end up coming out onto the front of your border, but so make sure when you do that in there you're just going between the 2 borders. Do it again, and then just sort of stick it out there. What we can do, if you then just pull it ever so slightly tighter as you cut it, there we go, it then disappears into the back, so you can't see where we did that. So you'll just need to do the same with this end, or first end, and that'll be that, and you're all completed. I really hope you've enjoyed making Flora's Fauna as much as I enjoyed designing it.